My name is Mathieu Lamolle. I work with ITC as a senior advisor on sustainable and inclusive value chains. At the ITC, we help SMEs to get greater confidence and to be able to embark on a sustainable journey in global value chains. We're hearing one clear and consistent message, which is that SMEs feel overwhelmed by the complexity and the cost of the sustainability transition. Why? Because they have to embark into investments for sustainable progress, for standards, for compliance with different regulations, standards, and in the end of the day, they are not so sure about the return on their investment. They need a seat at the table. They need their voice to be heard, and they need to be part of the solutions. That's the message we hear. They are ready to embark, but they need guidance, and they need tools. They need support. And this ministerial is actually changing that dynamic, looking at SMEs not just as beneficiaries of our projects, but also as co-creators of the solutions. SMEs have no choice. It is becoming a mandatory requirement for them to access markets and value chains. If they do not comply with sustainability regulations, if they do not capture and report on their carbon emissions, if they cannot prove that they are producing in deforestation-free status, if they are not able to have due diligence processes to demonstrate that human rights violations do not occur in their supply chains, then they run the risk of being left behind and being excluded from global value chains. So sustainability is becoming the norm. It's becoming a mandatory market access issue. Well, the toolkit is actually about one thing. It's about simplifying without oversimplifying. So the toolkit really helps SMEs to understand in a step-by-step process how to comply with sustainability requirements, how to document their progress, and how to communicate their progress over time with their buyers and with their partners. So this is what the Sustainability Toolkit brings to the SMEs. It's based on grounded business experiences, so very grounded to the reality of the SMEs, and it establishes a sort of a bridge with what financial institutions might require in order to give them loans, credits, and access to finance. So this is creating a language that SMEs can do not only to empower their own business, but also to talk to financiers and to access credit and then to be able to access the markets. So the toolkit is about that. It's about really simplifying a process, but not oversimplifying it so that it still talks to the wide range of partners in global value chains. But the smaller firms, they would only invest in something if they believe that there is some return on the investment, right? So the proof and the business case for sustainability is basically what the toolkit helps them to achieve. If they manage by self-assessment and by step-by-step understanding better those market requirements, those that we discussed would become the norm, the mandatory market access requirements, and they have such information in a format that talks to the financial institutions, then yes, they can achieve access to finance. Because the banks, and this is where ITC, we are working with banks, financial institutions, to ensure that there is some sort of a benchmarking between their ESG requirements, the reporting that they require on the indicators to give credit to SMEs, and what progress they have done. And the toolkit establishes this bridge between what the SMEs are doing and what the finance institutions are requiring. So hopefully, by embarking into this journey of sustainable transition, the SMEs will very rapidly get a sense of the return on their investment. And then financial institutions being reassured that the investments and that the credits that they are giving to the SMEs will be fulfilled. So this is basically the concept and the, let's say, underlying situation behind the toolkit. The main point is about, you want to do everything online or offline or a smart mix. And the toolkit is really about that later option. It's a smart mix between offline solutions and online. So you can run both ways. In Southeast Asia, in Africa, you have the same challenges of access to technology for SMEs, the digitalization process, and all of that comes together with a kind of again, how do they interact with their partners in global value chains that are highly digitalized? So the toolkit would enable both the offline integration of information, the kind of discussions about the progress made by companies in complying with regulations and standards, and then online digitalizing the process for communicating to their partners. So it operates really both ways, and we can see the toolkit as really being part of an ecosystem of digital solutions that companies and larger buyers in value chains, and that operates both in Southeast Asia but also in Europe and in Africa, about getting access to the information in a trusted way, a way that would have been validated all the way from the data collection part, the computation, the verification, and then the offering of the information to the right stakeholders in the end of the day. The digitalization that underlies the toolkit also goes heavily with traceability. And the traceability of the product, where is it coming from, which elements of the chain have been covered, is part of what the toolkit offers. So the profile of the SME using the toolkit would be completed with additional information that supports the digitalization process and the traceability of the products and value chains. More traceability, more trust, more access to buyers and markets. I would say one thing would be reward and recognize early compliance, because SMEs need to be recognized in their preliminary efforts to green and sustainability transition, so that they can see the benefit of going to scale and to really expanding their sustainability actions. So early recognition and rewarding of those compliance efforts made by the SMEs is essential. And that would be something that both the banks, but then also the governments and the buyers can actually do. The buyers, they can do early recognition of those efforts through pre-competitive platforms, for instance, or also through suppliers' incentives. The buyers can do that. They can support and incentivize the SMEs in their efforts. The banks, what can they do? They can probably benchmark their ESG reporting indicators to the sustainability requirements that the companies are fulfilling. So the toolkit would help the companies to show that they have made progress on sustainability. And then the banks, they can actually recognize those indicators by benchmarking them to their ESGs. Now, when it comes to the governments, well, they can actually embrace the sustainability toolkit and, for instance, mainstreaming it into their national strategies. That would be an easy way to facilitate early recognition and rewards of those sustainability efforts made by the SMEs. I would say the scale of the toolkit, the adoption by different value chains, different governments, different regions, financial institutions. Again, those three blocks, the large buyers, the governments, and the financial institutions that will recognize the power of this toolkit as an accelerator to sustainability, an accelerator of trust, and an accelerator of SME transition towards the green economy. So in 10 years' time, hopefully the scale will be there to demonstrate that the governments, the financial sector, and the private sector have embraced the toolkit. The message would be, see the SMEs as part of the solution. The SMEs represent the largest force to make the change towards sustainability transition. See that in them as an actor to co-create the solutions, rather than just seeing them as something that needs to change. The SMEs are ready. They are saying it. That was your first question. They are ready. They just need guidance, tools, and support.